But I'm Ellen Dupuy, and I'm the president of the South Orange County Gem and Mineral Club. And we're delighted to have everyone here on the Zoom meeting tonight. Thank you so much for making time for us and for coming to hear a very interesting program. Our program next month will be held at the San Clemente Community Center at 7 p.m. And it will be the co-editor of Ornament Magazine talking. His name is Peter Liu, and he will be talking about a specific Navajo or Dine family that he's known for years, and the beautiful jewelry that they make. And he'll probably bring samples. He had a cover story on this and the issue before last of Ornament Magazine, and it was really quite fascinating. Susan, while you're here, let's ask you to be unmuted and tell us about the field trip that's going to be held this coming weekend. Can you unmute yourself, or Marjorie, can you unmute Linda Susan Shimka?
Am I?
There, I hear you.
Okay.
Go
So
ahead.
we are going up Friday night out to the Southern Katy Mountains, and we are going to go rock hounding Saturday and Sunday. So meeting time is 9 a.m. I only have the coordinates. It's off of Hector Road. So if you would like to come, please message me. My phone number is 760-805-7386. I actually have a lot of interest. Sweetie is going to meet me again out there. I have, I think, 2 other people out of the SOCGEMS group that are interested, and then 3 other people from Chris's Field Trip Fanatics group.
Fantastic.
So it's going to be a great trip. We're going to go get some chalcedony or chalcedony, jasper, and oh my gosh, agate. They have 2 agates out there, so I'm super excited.
And would you put, Susan, would you put your phone number, contact information in the chat box? You can just type that information in, and then people will know how to get a hold of you. I appreciate that. All right, well, let's go to Richard now. Richard has done, this will be his 5th presentation regarding turquoise, the history of turquoise, the history of turquoise jewelry, and we're delighted to have him. He was our former vice president of the club. Then he moved away, but we saw him in Tucson this last weekend before last, when some of us went out to the big show in Tucson, and he keeps in touch, and we're delighted. I think you're all going to really enjoy his presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to him now. Richard?
Thank you so much, Ellen. A couple things. Through the magic of YouTube, all 3 of my series on Navajo jewelry, 1880 to present, it's in 3 parts. There's 4 hours. This will give you a great basis for what you're going to see today. And I highly recommend that you go out to YouTube, to the South Orange County Gems web presence there on YouTube, and you can see these presentations. I have done them now over the last 6 years, and recently I actually went back and viewed all 3 of them. So they're very informative on the things that you're going to see here. The slides that I did today, I wanted to basically depart and kind of enhance what those presentations are. So you won't get lost, but if you really want to dive deep and learn more about turquoise in relationship to Southwest jewelry, those presentations are there for you to enjoy. In the previous sessions that I've done, I kind of came to turquoise in a really cool way, in that my aunt, my father's sister, taught English out in the Navajo Reservation and Hopi Reservation in the 1930s to 1950s. And this was a time that we're going to talk about where it was very much agrarian, sheep raising, horseback riding, very primitive society. And my aunt was gifted all this beautiful old pond that you're going to see today. And so I used to go visit her in San Diego in the 60s, and it was like the treasure chest from the Southwest. I was just enthralled with this stuff. So much so that in 1969, she got me the magazine Arizona Highways, which we're going to talk about in a second. And it really kind of, through that exposure, and then starting to learn how to rock hound and do lapidary, that kind of my love for turquoise grew. I've actually been collecting now since 1971. And I said that when I retired, I wanted to basically kind of go back in and do jewelry again and kind of focus on turquoise and opal. And so 2 years ago, I had the great privilege of retiring. And so I got this really crazy idea, which had been away from turquoise since the time I was 15, was what happens if we went out and saw what was out there? So I had done these 3 presentations, talked about contemporary jewelry, mid-century Navajo jewelry, the early stuff. Could you actually find it? Could you go out to where the mines used to be, and could you still find, original stuff? So the cool thing is that I have a cousin who's right next to me, and she's going to say hello in effect. That because we're going to do the QVC thing, we're going to actually show you some of the stuff that we bought along the way. But anyway, we just got this crazy idea is like what's out there. So we had the time, and so we spent 6 months out on the road in 22, and we spent 7 months out on the road in 23. And literally our idea was, as crazy as it sounds, is hit every trading post and roadside stand in the Southwest. So if we were driving around and we saw a sign that said turquoise, Southwest jewelry, pull over. Let's walk in, let's see what there is. We went to the 3 most famous Native American Indian marts. One is at the Gene Autry. We've had previous trips out to Gene Autry to see the Indian artists that work there. There's a wonderful one that's next week in Phoenix at the Heard Museum in downtown Phoenix. And we went out to the mother of all Indian marts, which is the one in Santa Fe. So we started to meet artists. We started looking at this jewelry. We started to research museums that had jewelry in their gift shops. And what we found is that the mother and gold mine for all this stuff is in the most obscure museums. So we talked about the Heard Museum in Phoenix. There's a wonderful museum in Flagstaff called Northern Arizona. We went out to all the museums in New Mexico. They're in Santa Fe, Tahoe, and Albuquerque. We went to every antique barn that we could find in the Southwest and just went aisle by aisle looking at for this jewelry. We went to known specialty stores and galleries. Those are mostly focused in Sedona and Santa Fe. We went to the gem fairs, the Tucson Gem Show and Quartzsite. We actually went out to mining towns, Kingman and Bisbee, went all through Nevada where there was a lot of mining. And then we basically covered as much of the Southwest as we could. We went into Southern California, we went into Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Arizona, and New Mexico. So we feel like, in a way, and we kind of laugh amongst ourselves, is that we kind of strip mined all the good stuff over the last 2 years. I mean, we were just astonished at the sheer number of really cool stuff that we could find. A little bit of history on turquoise before we start. And this is in the previous presentations. It's the oldest continuous gemstone in the world. It was found with the pharaohs in Egypt. It was mined by the Chinese and given to the dynasties. So there's a very long recorded history that's goes back 3,000, 4,000 years. At here in America, at 300 AD, we started seeing Mesoamerican sites down in Mexico where there's burial items like mass that were produced by the Toltecs and the Aztecs. And what's interesting is that when they've gone back to look at the turquoise that actually was in those mass, they found out that it was originated many times here in America. So what they realized was the Anasazi people that were the precursors of the Navajo and the Hopi and the Zuni, these people had major trade routes into Mexico and to the east and to the north. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. In Chaco Canyon, they actually found a bead factory that had 58,000 beads lying within the factory floor. So we have a rich history about turquoise here in America. We have a very rich history of it abroad. What's quite interesting is that the primary turquoise during the Victorian and Art Deco area came from Iran. And it's a pure robin's egg blue. And Tiffany and Company wanted to basically compete against that for European dominance. So in 1890, they went out to California and they went out to New Mexico to start buying turquoise for the first time and popularizing it here in America. So if you look at the little blue box that you get with every Tiffany gift, that was actually based on the turquoise that they were buying out in Cerrillos, New Mexico. So really, when you look at, the history of turquoise, very old stone internationally, very young when you look at it relative to North America. It was really only to the 1890s that it became in vogue. If you look at Native American jewelry, though, it's an entirely different story. As I told you, the Pueblo people, the Anasazi, started making turquoise beads, and we're going to show you some examples of that in 300 AD. The Navajo had a diaspora event where they were taken off reservation and sent to New Mexico by US troops. And while they were in New Mexico, they learned from Mexican silversmiths how to make the precursor of what we know as Navajo jewelry. And the Hopi actually were very late to the game. It was the Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff that started a silversmithing program to teach the Hopi how to include turquoise into their traditional overlay. So when you look at it, the bulk of the turquoise that you're going to see today is Navajo and Zuni. It's very young for these tribes as well. In the 1970s, we had a major boom around turquoise, and it was based on one magazine, which I'm going to show you. You can still find this. It's Arizona Highways, and it was June of 1974. And this was really the shot that was sent around the world. They made a full-length magazine edition. Now, their regular published run for Arizona High was 80,000. This issue, they actually made 1,100,000 copies of. And this really started the whole movement to modernize and make Southwest jewelry popular here in the United States. And this was the single, probably most influential magazine that I got as a kid. It was right at the time that I was cutting turquoise. And it really opened my eye to what it could be. One company had control of 90% of the turquoise mined here in America. It's out here in Kingman, Arizona. It was the L. Hardy family and the Cobalts. And there was so much demand for turquoise at that time, they had to go into the waste dumps and tailings and pull out old chalk material, and then they would impregnate it with resins, a formula that they still are doing in the back of their shop 50 years later. And they created this whole market of what we call stabilized turquoise, because naturally occurring turquoise only occurs 5% of the time. And there was such demand for this jewelry as a result of this magazine, became like the Devote fashion statement. And then it kind of fell out of favor in the 80s. And there was a group of Japanese that basically started going in and buying all of the old natural jewelry, and then they would take out the stones and they would put it in gold. And they created a whole movement of high-end, high-quality, luxury turquoise in Japan. And that trend is still going on today after 32 years. And then the last major movement was that the Chinese had over 50 mines, and we're going to talk about those and show you examples of that. And they made a decision to flood the market in 1990 with this stabilized turquoise. So they had massive amounts of turquoise that they would treat. They tried to come in and take over the market. At the time of the 70s, you could buy a carat of turquoise for $1 a carat. They came in with the stabilized at 10 cents a carat. And they tried to control the whole market. And they pretty much dominated for 30 years. About 4 years ago, they shut down every mine. So there's no more Chinese turquoise that's available anymore. So when we talk about, the things that you're going to see, what we wanted to focus on was the period from 1880 to the 1970s. And we're going to show you a lot of items that we bought during this period. We certainly saw a lot of the high-end pieces that the Japanese are still buying, and we'll talk about that in a second. And we certainly have seen these Chinese pieces that are relics from the last 3 decades. So the good news is that going out to all these places, we were able to see all of this and available at different prices to buy. This is the turquoise that came out of the Anasazi people. And again, they had major trade routes. All the mines that we're going to talk about today, they had discovered prior to the Anglos bringing industrial mining to those sites. So out here in California, out by Hinckley, we have the Gov Mine. Out by Baker, we have Hollerent Springs. Near Searchlight, Nevada, we have Crescent Peak. We have Kingman. We have Morenci. We have Bisbee that we're going to talk about. When they went out to these sites, they found stone hammers that were used to break down the rock. They would build fires next to the rock and throw hot water, boiling water on the rock to get it to crack. And they were able to extract these little chips of turquoise. And what they did is they made these mosaic forms of jewelry. So they used pine resin to basically glue these chips of turquoise onto wood, bone, and shell. And then they would trade for other things. So when we talk about the prehistoric nature of turquoise, they had major trade routes developed all the way into Mexico City. There's a lot of historical pottery that in the Zuni Pueblos where they have parrots. And so one of the prime trading things is they sent turquoise south in order to get parrot feathers. So parrots are not natural to New Mexico, but they show up in the pottery. So it's pretty interesting when we talk about these histories that there is a prehistory here, but we're going to talk more about the modern use of these things. A lot of historical significance lies within the Navajo Nation. And in particular, they were the people that valued turquoise for a spiritual sense. So they believed that turquoise was for planning for the future, faith in holy ones, family. It represented water. For them, water was life because it was tied to their growing uh, uh, cycles. But they knew that the turquoise was in California, it was in Arizona and New Mexico. And so their trade routes, they associated turquoise with the South. They traded all the way to San Clemente and the Chumash out into Central Coast. They wanted the abalone. So that was a representation of language, love, unity, and air. So abalone is associated with the West. In the North, near Keams Canyon, they used to mine jet, and we'll show you examples of some jewelry that has that. And then they loved what they called the white clam, and that came from the East. And so they literally traded all the way to the mountain people in Illinois. There's examples of trade routes going to the Plains Indians. They traded all the way into Mexico, traded all the way into California. So there was very well-established trade historically for these people. When you look at Navajo jewelry, though, it's very, very succinct in the fact that they, as a nation, always bought cut stones. They were never people that, until very recent, actually took the time to actually cut stones. So when you look at the jewelry that we're going to show you, they would get the stones from the trading posts or traders, and then they would build the silver and gold jewelry around it. And the three-part series that you'll see that's already on YouTube will talk about how this stuff developed over 120 years. So I'm not going to talk about that. The good news, though, is that the Indians, when the 70s boom happened, they realized that individual artists were important. So they started to develop a whole series of hallmark stamps tied to individual artists. So when we go out and we look at this stuff out in the field and we're shopping for it, there's very good, well-established books that talk about these hallmarks by the various artists. And then what the jewelry represents was a form of a very early credit system that they developed in tandem with the trading posts. So they were agrarian people, they raised sheep, the wool was spun and made into rugs by women, jewelry was made by men. It was unisex in nature, so men wore beads, necklaces, they wore earrings, as well as women. Pretty much the same level of jewelry bisex. But they used these items through a system called pawn, where they were able to get staples while they were waiting for a rug to get completed. So it very much became a nation of credit, where they would pawn their jewelry, get money. They would sell a rug or two. They would bring the money back to the trading post and liberate this. And I have a piece that I'm going to show you here that actually has the pawn tag still on it. So this piece here was traded for goods in its previous life, and the pawn marking is dated 1968. The government came in the 80s and stopped the practice because they said that the trading posts were charging very high interest rates. And so you don't see it so much anymore. And then what the trading post became is high-end gift shops. So when you're going out and you're looking for turquoise, if you're looking for the natural high grade, all of that pretty much exists pre-1974. The pieces that we're going to show you here are all natural stones from that pre-74 era. And then pretty much everything that came post 74 is this treated, stabilized turquoise. And it looks and feels very differently. It's very inexpensive compared to the natural turquoise. So one of the things that's very, very important is to understand that not all turquoise is equal, and the fact that as you date stuff, different mines brought the turquoise out to the tribe. And so when I go out and I look at this pre-1974 stuff, I'm able to pretty much identify it by mine because it's the mines opened at different times, and they provided the Navajo the source material. So when you see these rings that we're going to show you, it's very easy for us through mine identification to identify. Now there's an important book that I'm going to show you here, and it's called Turquoise Unearthed. And this is the best $13 you'll ever spend. This is a Bible when we go out to look for these old mines and to identify this turquoise, because in the book is that it has every mine and examples, and whoever photographed these, they're spot on. So there's no saturation or photo alteration. So literally this book has absolutely the best photos of these old mines. So people say, well, how can you identify it? Well, this book, 90% of the time, we can take a piece of jewelry and match it to a stone in this book. And so when you're going out there, it's always important to have source material that you can take with you shopping. And how we got really smart is using this book. And then there's another book that I'm going to recommend to you, and it's about the Navajo hallmarks. And this is a recent book that came out a couple years ago, and it has all the hallmarks. It has all the artists that you're going to see. And we just carry these two books like faithfully any place we go. And I can tell you 99% of the time, we are able to identify the mine, identify the artist, identify the hallmark. So it's made it very, very easy for us to go out and go to out of the way places and find very important historical pieces and pay next to nothing. And so when we look at these mines in the early days, Tiffany bought up all of the mine material in California and Cerrillos. They controlled the market from 1880 to 1920. All the Tiffany blue rock was sent to New York and Germany to be cut and made into Victorian jewelry. All the green material that they found out in New Mexico was given to the Navajo. So when we look at these early pieces, almost 95% of the turquoise that you see and stuff that's 100, 120 years old came from this one mine and this one color. So it's very easy to spot when you see these historic pieces. And I'm going to show you some examples of these in a second. Those mines were basically under control of Tiffany. They ran out of turquoise around 1910. And then what happened was a bunch of Mormon families, which we're going to talk about, were out in Nevada, and they started finding new sources for blue turquoise. And so from 1930 to 1970, they would take this material, and again, the Navajo never liked to cut stones, so they would send it into San Gabriel, they would send it to Gallup, they would send it to New York, and they would send it to Germany, and they would have these beautiful cabochons made, and then they would make tourist trade turquoise. In 1936, Phelps Dodge started to discover in their deep copper pits in Morenci and Bisbee that there was turquoise that came with the copper. And so they opened up mining concessions, and we'll talk a little bit more. And some of the best turquoise that was ever mined came out of those two mines. And it's just electric blue is the only way that I can describe it to you. In the 1965 to 1974, Kingman controlled 80% of the market. And then they ran out and everything went to stabilized chalk. Uh, thank God for QVC and HSN, because there was a little mine out in Globe, Arizona called Sleeping Beauty. And they went all in on that mine and brought it to a global market via their home shopping network. So much so that they exhausted that mine literally in 6 years. And then the Chinese, as I told you, they tried to come in and control the American market. They started bringing in the first stones in 1980. They controlled probably 80% of the global market from 2000 to 2020, and it's all run out. So there's no more Chinese turquoise to be had. They've closed down every mine. So that's becoming a very hot commodity right now. So what we've kind of focused on is that, could you find the Cerrillos? Could you find the early Nevada mines? Could you get the Arizona mines? Could you get really good Kingman from the old days? And the answer is yes, we found all of that, and that's what we're going to show you. The other tribe that's of note is the Zuni, and they're the exact opposite of the Navajo. They're on the western flank of New Mexico. And these people were experts at lapidary. So they had multi-generations of a family that would cut pure colored stones. And then they would make these elaborate cluster bracelets. They would do beautiful inlay and channel work. They would do carved fetishes. And unlike the Navajo, each family had their own signature look, and nobody by culture was allowed to copy that. So these pieces are very easy to find. But the thing that's interesting is that as the matriarchs and patriarchs of the families died off, the hallmarks basically are kept by the family and they continue to use them. So sometimes it's very difficult to kind of date when these things are made. I'm going to hold up for you. This is one of the carved fetishes. And so each one of these is a shell or a turquoise or
I'm not
calcite
seeing it,
or
Richard.
onyx.
Are you holding up an example?
Yeah, can you guys see that in the
No,
video?
all I'm seeing is the slideshow. I don't know about anybody else.
Oh, okay, I'll go back to that when we're
Okay.
done. But
If
so I
you
have
can click,
examples of these fetishes that exist, and we have some of the inlay that we're going to show you. Some of it's very whimsical. So those are the two types of jewelry that you can find that have turquoise that are on the market, and they look very different. So generally, when we've been out, what's been interesting to us is that where have we got the best pieces and how much did we pay? And so our best finds actually were at the museums. And what we found is that the people that are in the gift stores, they understand the mines, they understand the tribes. So you'll have all the pieces properly identified by Hopi, Zuni, and Navajo. And they're extremely fairly priced. So if you were going to start to collect, our suggestion is you go to the Herd or you go to Northern Arizona Museum in Flagstaff, Millicent Rogers in Taos, New Mexico. Amazingly beautiful vintage pieces, all properly identified, all properly priced. And you can buy a ring as cheap as $75 at these places. In Sedona, Santa Fe, Scottsdale, there's several specialty stores that have always traded in historically important pieces. And I would say that they're like the Van Cleef and Arpels or the Tiffany and Company of Indian jewelry. So there's a wonderful shop in Sedona called Holes. And there's another one in Sedona called Garland's. There's a person named Faust and Waddell in Scottsdale. These people have amazingly beautiful items for sale at extremely high retail prices. So a turquoise choker, 3 years ago, you could buy them for $90 to $500. They're now selling for $5,000 to $6,000. Prices have gone through the roof because there's no natural turquoise left. What we found is that pawn shops and trading posts within the reservation or in the adjacent communities, there's hardly anything left of value. We didn't find any natural stones. What we saw is that tourists are demanding and receiving a really poorly made, lesser quality stabilized turquoise. So we found that where we thought that if you went out towards the reservation, there's just nothing left out there at any of these places. We went out to a lot of the historic mines. In the south of Arizona is the famed mining town of Bisbee. It's most valued turquoise in the market. They didn't have any for sale there. It's so bad that they're taking Chinese turquoise and reselling it as Bisbee in Bisbee. So we went out to Nevada where all the mines were there. We went to Kingman. We've been to every major place that was an historic mine in the 60s and 70s, and there's none left. All the miners that are out there that are aged are selling to a few traders, and they're selling like a jar or two of rough material. We're going to talk about the Japanese. There's a wonderful book that you want to get on the current history of turquoise. It's called Turquoise in America, Volume 3. You can get it off their website. It's called Turquoise in America. And they talk about this phenomenon as the Japanese realized that this high quality turquoise from the 70s was going to be very, very valuable. So there's literally 4 gentlemen that we've been flying around for the last 15 months we've been on the road that are going in and following us through one door, or we're going out the other door looking for this natural turquoise. And they have a nice network of what I call turquoise pickers that send this stuff to Japan. They're getting a markup of 400 to 1,000% over the US price. And it's just phenomenal. Like I said, we've literally followed 4 people around for 15 months. And just to give you a sense of pricing, when I started collecting in 1971, turquoise went for $1 a carat. The best stones now in Japan, and they're paying this all day long, starts at $450. They're paying up to $1,200 a carat now. So it's definitely probably one of the most successful investor stones of all time. And so anything that I think that you're going to see here today, we've seen the prices just in 2 years triple. And I think it's one of the best stones to hold right now because none of it is being produced anymore at any significant rate. And then the last thing that we were been astonished with is that we've gone to antique barns and hole-in-the-wall places, and we found amazing pieces mismarked and mispriced. And my classic story, and I'm going to show this to you in a second, is that I bought a necklace for $40 that the lady says it was blue plastic. And this is probably one of the rarest pieces that I'll ever touch. It's worth thousands of dollars. And it's from one of the most celebrated claims down in Sleeping Beauty. It dates from 1965. And she was embarrassed to sell it to me for $40 because she said, why would I buy the blue plastic? So you never know what you're going to find when you're out picking or digging. Some of the best places that we found turquoise was in West Yellowstone, Montana, Virginia City, up in Nevada, and Tucson, Arizona. So what we've found is the farther away we go from these specialty stores, the more likely we're going to find something that's of significance. So let's talk about the first turquoise boom. Again, this was from 1880 to 1920. It was all under the control of Tiffany and Company. The green turquoise was given to the Navajos. During the course of the mines being opened, they mined $18 million worth of turquoise down there. So it wasn't an insignificant effort down there. And we were just surprised at, hey, could you actually find something from that era? And the answer is yes. Here's two rings that we were able to find. They date from 1910. They're both Navajo in design. Very, very simple silver work, handmade. The stones are very, very glassy green turquoise from Cerrillos. And we ended up finding 3 of these rings. I was able to get one for $100 and then get another one for $300. So you can definitely still find the very, very old turquoise. I have a very dear friend named Frank Hill in Santa Fe, and he has about 30 or 40 of these pieces at any given time. So the first wave of Navajo jewelry, which is one of the 3 YouTube episodes, you can still actually find these pieces. I was pleasantly surprised that you could do this. The next wave, which was episode number 2, was the establishment of the tourist trade. And that came about because of the Harvey houses being built along the railroads and major trading posts and hotels being built along Route 66. So from basically 1920 to 1940, there was a lot of pieces that were made that were Anglo representations of Navajo jewelry and native made. And we're going to show you those. What distinguishes these, though, is that all of the stones were cut away from the Navajo. So these were stones that were professionally cut in Germany. They go by a name German cut. So these are perfect cabochons of turquoise. The source of the mines are Nevada and Colorado. And this was all related to a few Mormon families that were very closely related that kind of went out into the West in Nevada to develop all these claims. And in the Turquoise in America Volume 2 book, you can read about all these families. And the 3 top mines from that era were a mine called Blue Gem, which was out in Battle Mountain. Out by Tonopah, there was the Lone Mountain, and out by Carolyn, there was the Fox Mine. And so they produced hundreds of pounds of turquoise per month. It was sent into San Gabriel, it was sent into Gallup, it was sent into New York, it was sent into Germany for recutting. And so all of the Navajo jewelry that you see from this time period has the type of exquisite lapidary work. One of the things that I love to collect, though, is that they also made very, very whimsical brooches and pins. What you see here are ones that were developed and stamped by Navajo artists in a trade program called United Indian Traders Associate. So each of the trading posts had its own unique stamp. And then it verified that these pieces were actually made by a Navajo person. So on the left, you see a roadrunner. On the right, you see a galloping horse. You see a horse's head. You see, which was one of my favorite pieces, a really nicely cut piece of turquoise, again, German cut, made into a silver fly. So I love this nature of these things being very culturally important and reflective of their life out in the reservation at this time between 1920 and 1940. You can buy these things for as little as $70. They go up to $300. And many places along the way were able to find these. These are the Anglo made ones. So these were made by two companies, one in Albuquerque and one in San Gabriel. They were based on Indian designs. One is a thunderbird, another one's a butterfly, a cowboy, and a dog. What's interesting about them, they were machine made. All the stamps were machine made. And on the back, they say sterling silver. So the way that you can tell the Native American ones is that they did not stamp the work other than the trading post. These ones are all stamped sterling, and we know that they were made by these outside companies. And so you can find these as well. This is an example of a 1940s piece of turquoise. It's done in a Navajo style. It's why I say mining history is important. This came from a mine called Pilot Mountain. It had a very unique matrix that looked like dried chewing tobacco. So you can instantly spot this turquoise out in the market. It all has kind of this kind of weird, twisted brown matrix that's very, very present. You can see that the design around here is classic Navajo with stamps and cutouts. This mine was done by the 1960s. So we know that when we see a piece like that, that the stone here was at least probably mined in the 1950s to 1960s. This is a blue gem mine. This is a very interesting story, is that this mine was in existence only from 1930 to 1967. It was the favored turquoise of the Navajo during this period. This was a ring that we found for $180, and we were able to kind of remove the stone and repurpose it and make it into a contemporary piece of jewelry. So the stone, we'll show it to you in video in a second, but it's very, very striking old stone, purest blue, very high quality natural turquoise. After the mines got depleted in Nevada, the two people that really brought turquoise to the forefront were the Phelps Dodge people and the people in Kingman. And these were all associated with large open pit copper mines. So turquoise was actually found in Tyrone in 1869, and they had a seam of turquoise that was 40 feet across. It was the largest seam ever discovered. And they basically removed it, crushed it for its copper content. And that copper mine never allowed turquoise to ever be sold or removed from the pit. That mine is still in operation. In Morenci, they discovered turquoise in 1936. They created a concession for a man named Lucky Brown, and he ran it from 1950 to 1984. I was able to find two really beautiful pieces, which I'm going to show you. This stuff is the deepest blue turquoise that was ever mined because it was associated with copper. And then in Bisbee, which was the richest copper deposit ever in America, they were able to discover it in 1953, and which was their policy, is that they allowed miners to take material out in their lunch boxes. So all of the Bisbee turquoise that you'll ever see that's on the market came out that way. And the mine closed in 1972. So these three mines here produced the highest quality, and therefore, because it's the deepest blue, it's the stuff that the Japanese want the most. Somebody's moving around, and it's locked up my screen. So
We can hear you now.
yeah, I don't know what's going on, but my screen's locked. I'm gonna have to maybe, okay, we're good now. Yeah, please, and I say this to you people, is that when you move around, It locks me out from my presentation. So anyway, this is examples of the Morenci. Again, you can see that's very deep electric blue. This stuff came from the early days of the mine from 1950. Here's an example of a Zuni piece done by a very famous woman named Effie, who used a snake motif. So if you kind of look at the bottom left, you see the little snake head with the two eyes. And you can see that it curls around the snake design. And then she incorporated Mediterranean turquoise from Morenci with beautiful red coral. These are examples of Navajo jewelry made in the 50s using a wire technique. And this is really beautiful large stones of Bisbee turquoise. And to give you a price on this, the one on the top is called Bisbee Red Web. That's going for $450 a carat. The one on the bottom is what's called Smoky Bisbee, and that's going for $300 a carat now. And so those stones at the top is probably 20, 25 carats. The one at the bottom is at least probably 15 to 20. So these are really exquisite stones. People would normally take this probably, and even though they're historically important, they would remove these stones and probably put them in new jewelry. The other significant mine is one that's just to the east of where I live, which is in Kingman. And this was founded in 1871. And there was 3 different zones within a copper pit mine out there. One was called Ithaca Peak and Aztec Peak. Those were the historic properties. And then the new property that's still producing is called Turquoise Mountain. Just to give you an example, before the Chinese came into the market, this mine, Ithaca Peak, provided 70% of all the turquoise that was part of the turquoise boom from 1974. It's found as nuggets and spiderweb, and right now it's the only remaining mine that's still open. But since 1974, they've shifted all of their production from natural turquoise to stabilized. And they basically dominate the market right now. This is an example of the pre-1974. This is a very well-known Navajo artist named Helen Long. This is a Yay person, which is equivalent to the Hopi Kachinas. This was made in silver, and what you see at the top and in the middle of the torso are classic Ithaca Peak nuggets. And then you can see that the eyes are these German cut cabochons. So very, very easy to kind of identify this turquoise. It has a seafoam green and a really brilliant blue hue to it. Has very deep pyrite in it. So it's very easy to identify when you're out in the field. This is a set made by a wonderful Zuni artist named Robert Likia. What you see on the left is a beautiful nugget that's been carved almost like a fetish into a ring. And then what you see is a matching 2-stone drop. This is the snake woman again, Effie, another Zuni piece. And that's right there, 6 pieces of this classic Kingman turquoise. So again, when you look at pieces that were made in 1965 to 74, they all almost feature 100% this Ithaca Peak turquoise. So we know that we can date these pieces because they're natural Kingman, not stabilized Kingman. One of the great American success stories was the marketing of Sleeping Beauty turquoise. This was the first American mine to mimic Persian turquoise because it was very pure blue stones. The mining started in 1965, and due to the great success of Home Shopping Network, they exhausted the mine 12 years ago. The adjacent copper pit where the turquoise was mined produced billions of dollars. The turquoise had in its best year was worth about 3 million. So they made a decision that they didn't want turquoise there. It was more a hindrance than a happening. And so they literally buried all of the turquoise under 60 feet of tailings. And right now, this is probably the hottest turquoise that's in the market. If you go into Santa Fe and you own anything that's natural, it's fetching $6,000 to $7,000, $8,000 for a strand of turquoise. So they had 12 grades of material, 3 were natural. So there's top, medium, and low. And then they had 9 grades of stabilized during the time of QVC. And we see very little of the top natural turquoise. We're going to show you some examples of that in a second. So this is a pond piece. You can see that it was pawned in 1968 in Gallup, New Mexico. It's a Zuni piece. In the top, all of the pieces that you see there are the pure blue of Sleeping Beauty. And why we know this is a Zuni piece is that they love the ox blood colored coral. So typically when you see Navajo jewelry, their turquoise is more orange. And when you look at the Pueblo people, they like this ox blood. So this is an example of a pond piece. Again, it's from 1968, so it's from the early days of the mine. Again, it's something that was used ceremonially. It was probably put on a leather rope and worn at ceremony. This is probably one of the most famous contemporary Navajo artists. His name was Tommy Singer. Again, he did not do the lapidary work. He would buy these stones already pre-configured and he would do the silver work. But again, he was a champion of this mine. And so what you see here is a piece made by him. This is my famous $45 necklace. This is Pueblo. It was sold to me as blue plastic. It's the deepest blue, top grade, Sleeping Beauty. It came from a claim within the mine called the Birt claim. And this dates from 1965. So you can see that very, very deep silicated blue, almost plastic-like. She wasn't incorrect. So this is an example of something that I got for $45, probably my best find on the road. Chinese, as I told you, is that we say a lot of this turquoise in Southwest jewelry. It came to become the dominant turquoise from 1980 to 2020. They had over 50 mines that were over there. They produced globally 80% of the modern turquoise. They had some of the best spider web. In the very early beginnings, they allowed natural turquoise to come in, and they basically realized that that wasn't their game, that they wanted to flood the market. So all of the production was stabilized, and they sold it at 10 cents a carat. And as of 4 years ago, every mine has been shut down now. And so there's no more Chinese market for the turquoise. This is an example of what they call the red web. That's from a mine called Mashan. They're reselling it now in Bisbee as Bisbee red web. And you can feel it. It's when you touch stabilized turquoise, it's very plastic feeling. And so when we were down in Bisbee, this is being sold openly as Bisbee turquoise to unsuspecting people. And again, it's just Chinese stabilized. So this is kind of an example of some of the things that you can find out at the marketplace. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna see if I can go to video. And we'll have a little bit. Can you guys see me now as a full screen?
Yes. Uh-huh, we can see you.
Okay, so now we'll have the fashion show portion of this thing. So we have all the pieces that you've just seen, and we wanted to show you this so you can see it. But this is the green Cerillos ring. You can see it has a very simple shaft, and it has just these three prongs. When you look at the old turquoise, if you run your finger on it, it should feel very cold to the touch, and it should feel very smooth, like a marble. And again, we know that there was no stabilized turquoise in 1910, so it's very easy to identify these old historic rings. Again, this came from the gentleman that I told you about named Frank Hill in Santa Fe. My cousin, she has a beautiful old turquoise ring from the 1920s that was her grandmother. And this is made out of Nevada turquoise. Again, you can see that it's a perfect cabochon. And then all the Navajo person had to do was embellish it. And what's interesting is in the Hallmark book, they have the exact same piece in the book, like almost to like you would think that the photograph was this ring. So again, this we know was made in 1920. This is an example of Navajo work. And you can see that the Navajo work has a lot of detailing in the band. It has these sawed out areas. This is the classic Bisbee turquoise. I'm sorry, it's probably not showing it, but it's a really pure electric blue, very, very unique. This is about a 20 carat ring. And again, the Japanese are paying $300 a carat for this stone right at the moment.
Richard, if you pull it back from the screen just an inch or two, I think we can get a better focus.
Is that better?
Not quite so close. It seems to look a little better if you're not quite as close.
Yeah, I'm going to do something. I'm going to see if the lighting's a little better. Lighting
Yeah,
better there?
yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay. This is an example of a Navajo cuff bracelet. What you see here is that every stone here is one of the little nuggets from Ithaca Peak. Has the beautiful pyrite in it, has the really beautiful blue. This is from the early 70s, I believe. Has a lot of applique work, and it's a 6 stone thing. And again, it has the Indian hallmark on it, on who made it. So this is very, very typical of the 70s stuff. Again, all natural stones. If you run your finger on them, they're very glassy. This is a beautiful ring from the early days of the Morenci mine. And again, try to get the light on it, but it's pure electric blue. This is from 1950. I got this at the Millicent Rogers Museum in Taos, New Mexico, for a very reasonable price. I think I paid $150 for this. But some of the best turquoise that was ever mined came out of the two pits at Bisbee and Morenci. This is an example of one. On the Zuni side, this is the Leica ring that I showed you that has the company set. It's made out of beautiful piece of Ithaca Peak. This was made, I was told, in 1968 by somebody that knew him. And this is the corresponding drop made out of the same exact stones. So it's very rare, and I say this too, I bought these from two different people, and I was really surprised that I was able to get stones that actually look like they came off the bench, identical. This is the F.E. Bolo with the snake design. So this is from 1965. It's very, very old. It has a very deep patina. She always had a hallmark on her pieces. So we know that this is from that era. But really all the turquoise, if you look at the Leica pieces, you look at the Navajo pieces, all the stones match. This is probably the most whimsical thing that we found along the way. This is what they call Zuni tunes. And the Zuni people love Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Minnie. This is Tigger. And it's all done using inlay work of shell, jet, and turquoise. And you can find these out. And again, they're called Zuni tunes, Z-U-N-I tunes. But it just shows how whimsical they were at adapting to modern times. This is a traditional uh, uh, Thunderbird made out of jet, mother of pearl, clam, turquoise. This is from the 70s. Very typical of the inlay work that the Zuni people did. This is the famous fetish that you couldn't see in the middle of it. But what this is about 100 different animals that were carved out of shell, calcite, turquoise, and the like. And it's just a whole kind of like Noah's Ark of things. There's bears, foxes, ducks, trout, owls, turtles. So it's really amazing that each one of these is an individual piece of carving. And again, they call these fetishes. This is a beautiful Sleeping Beauty necklace that was made by the Navajo. It has white clam and Sleeping Beauty turquoise. There's over 400 stones in this. It's a 2-strand, the deepest blue. Again, mismarked. I found this in a antique barn in Arizona. And again, people didn't know what it was. These are the pins that I was telling you about. This is the horse that you see that's from the United Indian Traders. It has the trading post stamp on it. And then this is an example of more the Anglo piece that was made in Gallup. This is a cowboy that's got his pistols ready to be drawn. Very comical. So again, these were sold at Fred Harvey railroad stops and along trading posts. Very, very popular. This is the Tommy Singer. So again, beautiful Sleeping Beauty turquoise. This is the Chinese Mahashan. So very nice in terms of turquoise. This is probably about 30 carats. But again, the price on the stabilized now is only $3 a carat versus $300 for the Bisbee. This is the Pilot Mountain that you see. Again, the matrix looks like chewing tobacco. It's a very easy mine to spot. This is Helen Long, the Yay Kachina. You can see the nuggets pull back. Exquisitely made. In this Arizona Highways in 1974, she was the only artist that was given a full page to show her work. She had like 7 pieces up, but she excelled at making these Yay pieces. This is a 1950s twisted bracelet, the very best Bisbee turquoise. So a very simple design, probably worn maybe by a child or a small woman. It's a very, very petite bracelet. And then this is the matching ring that's made out of the wire. It almost looks like a turtle. But very, very simple application of silver. And then the last piece that we have here is the blue gem that's been repurposed. That's copper on silver. So you can see how beautiful blue that turquoise is. So I'm going to open it up to people. If you have specific questions, go at it. But thing is that I like to just share with you is that all of this stuff is out there. If you're smart and you read these books that I've told you about, the Hallmark book, the Turquoise and Earth, Turquoise in America, Volume 3, you look at the old Arizona highways, you would be able to go out and visit any of these cities and find these pieces.
When did Sleeping Beauty start treating their turquoise?
Mm.
Well, it came about quite early, and L. Hardy was the man that basically ran Kingman and Sleeping Beauty, and he developed a process with a guy named Chuck Coball. The Coballs now run the mine at Kingman. But Chuck Coball basically created a formula that they're still using today. He developed it in 1965. And so they used to bring these pieces, to Chuck to basically stabilize. So it's been going on as long as that I know. Um, so it's very rare, and I say this to you, to go out and actually find the natural, non-treated. And again, these pieces that you see here that I have were made in the 60s. So would have been more in vogue to have natural turquoise than treated back in the day. This is a beautiful bracelet that I'm going to share with you. This is the highest quality stabilized turquoise that was sold by QVC. It's been owned by my cousin for 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
So this was what was originally sold on the Home Shopping Network, these beautiful dentist bracelets of matching stones. And to be honest with you, the work is exquisite. The stone cutting is exquisite. So they did a really good job at creating a mystique around that mind and bringing it to the public. And you see a lot of it in the Zuni jewelry. You see a lot of it in the Navajo jewelry.
Does anybody else have questions? And Richard, can you tilt your screen a little bit where you're getting cut off right above your eyes?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, much nicer.
Good call there, Ellen.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do. I think there was someone asked about the second book that you were showing, Richard.
Turquoise unearthed.
I believe someone had a question. I don't know who it was. Ellen, do you remember who that was?
Oh, the person who had the question, if they would write their question in the chat or speak up. They wanted to know the second book you mentioned, and of course you mentioned several, and you probably don't remember the order.
There it
Well,
is.
I'll show them again for everybody.
Oh yeah, because we couldn't see them when you were doing the slideshow. The slide.
Yeah, so the first one is called Turquoise Unearthed. It's by Joe Dan Lowry, Lowry. And this is the best $13 you'll ever see because it has all of the historic American mines, and it has beautiful photos of all the variants of what the stones look like. And so if you were to take one book just out on the road and go into these places, it could be an antique barn, or you'll get really good at identifying the turquoise very, very quickly. I don't know who did the photography or how they did it, but it's spot on in terms of the colors that you see in each of these mines. And I think it's probably like the best $13 that you'll spend.
We just
If
found
you
it
want-
on Amazon for $20, so the price has gone up, but it's still available.
Yeah, the next book that I would recommend is it's called Hallmarks of Native Southwest Jewelry. It's by a mother and daughter couple that live in Tucson. This came out maybe 2 years ago. It was at $35, but it has every significant Navajo artist by their hallmark, and it has all the traditional Harvey era jewelry by the manufacturing stamps. So this is the best way when you go out, if you're wanting to buy vintage, to kind of authenticate stuff from 1920 to 1940. It's a fantastic book. And it tells you about each of the artists, their hallmarks, when they were busy, has really beautiful photos of the work. Because they had 1,100,000 copies of this, if you can get the Turquoise issue of Arizona Highways, it has this bull skeleton on the cover. And you can see that it's from January of 1974. There's a really amazing photos in these editions, and you can go out and try to look for these historic pieces that were from this era. So this is another Bible that we carry with us when we're out looking.
And we just bought it on Amazon for $10.
Yeah, buy that.
Yeah, we
Buy that.
just found it.
And then the other book that I want to say this to you is that when I started doing it, there was no history on the mines. And two people out of Santa Fe, Philip Chambliss and Mike Ryan, decided to write the whole history of turquoise mining in America. So they started with the Tiffany era, which is volume 1. Then they talked about the Mormon families that I talked about, how they went out to Nevada to supply the Harvey era. And then this book, volume 3, is about what's going on in turquoise over the last 30 years. It has everything about Home Shopping Network, the Japanese. It has perspectives from native artists, retailers, miners. It's all done in interviews. So if you wanted to know more of just about turquoise in general and what's moving the market, what's real and what's not real, this is probably the best book that's out there right now. And you can get it off their site. It's called turquoiseinamerica.com. But those are the only things that you would need to bring out into the road to be successful in finding these things.
Oh, I'm excited to go look in my jewelry drawer and see what I've got. Maybe I can identify some things now based on your expertise. Does anybody else have any questions? Let me look in the chat and see if anybody's posted anything. No chat things. Richard, I just want to thank you so much. I know when we met up in Tucson, we were at Dayton Simmons' shop in Tucson, and he only sells natural turquoise. And we were lucky the club was lucky to have him come down and do a talk and a sale last year. And he says that he's going to come down again this year. So if you're wanting to know about when that will happen, it'll be sometime this spring. And just keep in touch with our Facebook page and become a member of the club and get notices about all these kinds of events that we do to help educate people about turquoise and gems from around the world and all kinds of different topics.
Yeah, Ellen, I do want to shout out to Dayton because in all of my travels, he is the most, he's the dealer with the most integrity in terms of really only selling natural turquoise. Yep. And he probably represents about 50 to 60 mines at any given time. And then the other family that I can recommend is down in Tubac, and that's Tubac. And they're called the Lone Mountain Trading Post or Trading Company. It goes by that name, Lone Mountain. But this is the grandchildren of a miner that owns 6 of the most prosperous mines in Nevada and Colorado and Arizona. And they have an incredible collection of natural turquoise as well. And in terms of mine identification, I've never met people that know more about turquoise than the 2 brothers that are the grandchildren of the original miner. So there are good people out there, but I can highly recommend Dayton. I know that he's had numerous presentations. And he's the last chapter in Turquoise in America, Volume 3. That I can tell you.
Well, thank you so much. If there are no more questions, wait, I see a couple of things that have popped up in the chat. Are there anything new? No, just people saying thank you. And we really do appreciate your time and your expertise in putting this together for us. Thank you so very much, Richard.
You're
A big
welcome.
clapping to you from all of us.
Everybody take care.
Thank you so much.
Be good.